We are now at ECL3 section Wilhelm Go Eri. This diagram is basically inserted as a visual. Go-Eri, in his preparations for biblical wisdom, didn't really do anything new. All he did was build on what Kircher had said, but he made a lot of these artistically interesting diagrams. Seems like dozens of these. But in this diagram, he maps, or we see a visual of A, Coptic A, matching to the Ho, the delta loosely matching to the D, the Polaris pole holding sign, aka Ankh, matching to K, and the three water jugs loosely matching to N in the year 255A. Here we see is where I decoded letter A on 25 August, 3 years ago, based on the fact that there's three guys with erections holding letter A. Has to be where letter A came from. There's just some other sections, like Edward Clark citing Kircher, talks about how Kircher says this is the hieralpha, and he says this sort of looks like the Theban plow, and he says the author in Lapland have seen plows like this, which correspond to letter A. So he's loosely agreeing that maybe this is the plow is where letter A comes from, but it's difficult to concur on this. As for where the Ho equals A, there's some after Kircher who said this. But here we see two oxen pulling a letter A-shaped plow. From the present day, this is obvious where letter A comes from, not these horns. But it's difficult to unravel. But in 5 February, A68 building on Joseph Arianesti, who said the following things 10 years ago, and A60 said that if we map the Cretan, Phoenician, Greek, Latin, English A's to the plow, we loosely see that the plow matches letter A. And he talks about this in his decipher in the English code, where he says that maybe this looks like I can see an ox if I twist my brain, but I can also see how this early Greek A resembles the plow a bit more than the ox. So here we see somebody who's using his brain. He's not just following what everybody else wrote before him. So I started searching for plow in A. I read Arianesti's section, and I eventually concurred that certain letters, such as some of the Phoenician plow symbols and the early Hebrew plow symbols matched the Greek plow. So here we see the evolution of Hebrew A, plow, 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 and so on.
The antecedent of the plow is the prehistoric digging stick.
Here we ask, this is sort of a funny poll I did. If you post this online and ask, where is letter A? If you ask 4-year-olds, they'll tell you that this is letter A. If you ask linguists or Egyptologists, they'll tell you that this number 2 is letter A, which is kind of like when people have been brainwashed by status quo and don't even understand reality anymore. So here's the letter A as defined on the first Hebrew revolt coins, which loosely matches the plow, but most Hebrew linguists will 99% will say, oh no, it comes from the ox head. And that's one of the varieties of the Phoenician letter A as a plow. Now the phonetic is of letter A is a little. Some of us, the old timers used to say it was the sound that the ox made breathing out of its mouth. It was where alpha came from, in a sort of blurry, stupid conjecture. But Lampros, the grandparent of Plutarch, said that A is the first sound that children make, and that's where letter alpha came from. It's the sound that babies make when they start breathing. Seville likewise said that letter A is the first letter among all peoples because it initiates voice in babies as they are being born. So here we see two intelligent humans. The fact that letter A has to do with air is corroborated by the fact that Enlil, the Sumerian air god, is said to split heaven from earth with his letter A-shaped hoe or plow. So presumably there's overlap between or cross-cultural, Egyptological, or cosmological belief system overlap that allowed Shu and Enlil and the plow to become overlapped to become letter A, a lot of which we don't understand because we're lacking data. There's Enlil's letter A-shaped hoe/plow. And also the hoe in Sumerian is called al. So the present cipher is that if we look on Greek gems, we see the Harpocrates child with his mouth, fingers on his lips with omega and alpha behind him. So the idea is when he takes his fingers off his lips, he's born out of the lotus, which is letter 1000 in Greek. He takes his fingers off his lips, and then A is born as alpha, as the Harpocrates child speaking. And it goes back through omega. And this is corroborated by these Greek visuals of the children with the horse falcon with their finger on their lips. Also, Socrates reported here that the Egyptians had an infinite number of vowels, which conflicts with modern day belief that Egyptians had no vowels, which is another example of throwing reported history out the window and believing in modern day nonsense. Ovid likewise says that in his Metamorphosis says that the Harpocrates child his finger means silence. Also, Harpocrates is a cipher for zygote. So it means when the lotus heats the surface of the earth, things grow, eventually become a zygote, and eventually the baby takes his finger off its mouth and makes the first vowel, which is A, or the child speaking. And these go through the vowel series mathematically. We've touched on qubit order. So we see God in Shu and Enlil, and the whole became morphed to become this ostrich feather, which eventually became letter A. Details of which we are lacking, aside from reported historical facts. Here we see the Genesis reports that air was made on the second day, which matches with, corroborates with the air symbol being the second unit on the Egyptian cubit ruler. The circle dot is not fully corroborated, but if exactly what it is. Supposedly it's the Polaris star, but if we remove the circle dot, we have the ostrich feather, everything gets shifted to the left. Ostrich feather aligns with letter A as air. Now we have this level of decoding. Ostrich feather is A, the goose is G, delta is this, and Z is set, the 8 fingers is H, and then we have the ogdoad.